My mother handed me a $20 bill and told me to be independent. I was 18. It was raining. And that $20 was supposed to be my severance package from the family I'd spent my entire life trying to belong to. Let me back up, because you need to understand how I got to that moment, standing on a porch in Bloomington, Indiana, soaked to the bone, with a suitcase at my feet and nowhere to go. Our house always smelled like lemon cleaner and engine oil. My mother's obsession with appearances mixed with my father's obsession with control. From the outside, we looked like any other middle-class family. Inside, we were a quiet hierarchy, and I'd learned my place early. My sister Courtney was at the top. I was somewhere near the bottom, below the family dog if I'm being honest. Dad, Raymond Miller, ran a small auto shop after leaving his teaching job. He believed sweat was proof of worth, that hard work could fix anything. Mom, Janet, kept the family books the same way she kept her emotions. Neat columns. No room for error. No room for mess. And Courtney. She was their miracle child. Pretty, articulate, charming. A PR major with a 1,000-watt smile that could light up any room she walked into. Every compliment in that house curved toward her like she was the sun and the rest of us were just planets orbiting around her glow. I learned early that my place was the folding chair at the edge of the dinner table. Metal, cold, legs unsteady. Easy to pack away when guests came over. When Courtney turned 16, she got a used Honda with a red ribbon tied on the hood. I remember watching from my bedroom window as Dad presented it to her in the driveway. The whole neighborhood came out. Mom took pictures. Courtney cried happy tears. I got a bookstore gift card for my birthday that same year. $25. Mom handed it to me at breakfast, didn't even look up from her coffee. You love reading, right? She said. I said, thank you, and pretended the word didn't burn coming out. That's how it was. Every achievement of mine got footnoted. Every stumble got headlines. But the day that envelope came, the one with the blue university seal, I let myself believe the script might change. I'd worked my ass off. After-school tutoring gigs, fixing old appliances for neighbors, saving every dollar I could scrape together. I'd studied until my eyes burned, rewritten that application essay 7 times. When I tore that envelope open and saw the word, congratulations, something in my chest cracked open. Hope, maybe. Or just the possibility that they might finally see me. That evening, I stood in the kitchen holding that acceptance letter like it was a flag I'd earned the right to wave. I got into Indiana State, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They gave me a scholarship. It's not full, but I can make it work. I just need help with housing and... Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. We can't pay for 2 tuitions, he said flatly, like he was commenting on the weather. Mom sighed, sorting bills on the counter. Courtney's pre-law program is already expensive. You'll have to be realistic, Ruby. Realistic. That word hit different when it's aimed at your dreams. I've worked for this, I said, hearing my voice start to shake. I've saved $2,000. I can cover the rest if you just help with. Dad set the paper down. His voice turned sharp, the way it did when he was done with a conversation before it even started. Then cover all of it. You're 18, Ruby. Time to be independent. Courtney's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, smiled at whatever message she'd received, then looked up at me with that same calm expression she always wore. Like my life falling apart was just background noise to her perfect day. She's overreacting, she said softly to our parents. That word, overreacting, was the fuse. I'd swallowed their silence for years. Their favoritism. Their casual dismissal of everything I'd worked for. But that night, something snapped. You've never even asked what I want, I said, my voice shaking. Not once. Not ever. The table went still. Mom's hand trembled once before she reached into her purse, pulled out a $20 bill, and pressed it into my palm. Her eyes were cold, like she was paying off a debt she never wanted to owe. Be independent, she said. Dad didn't look up again. I packed that night. 1 suitcase, a few notebooks, my acceptance letter folded carefully in my jacket pocket. When I walked out the front door, rain had already started falling. I turned back once and saw Courtney standing at the window, her reflection blurred against the glass. She didn't wave, didn't mouth, sorry. Didn't even look guilty. She just watched me leave. That's how it began. With a door closing and the sound of thunder swallowing my name. The first night alone, I learned exactly how cold metal can feel when there's nothing between you and it. The bus stop bench was slick with rain. The $20 in my pocket was already damp, the ink starting to blur at the edges. Every car that passed splashed water at me, and I felt myself getting smaller with each one. I kept staring at that acceptance letter, watching the words blur, trying to convince myself they still meant something. But what good is a college acceptance when you don't have a bed to sleep in? When you can't even afford a meal? By midnight, the streetlights buzzed like they were shivering too. I told myself I'd figure it out, find a job, find a room, find anything. But the truth was, I didn't even have an address to write on an application form. The second night was worse. Colder. My stomach had stopped growling and started aching, that hollow pain that makes you dizzy. I tried to sleep sitting up, my suitcase clutched against my chest like it might keep me warm. By the third night, my body started shutting down. Fever set in. The air felt sharp in my lungs, like breathing glass. Every breath hurt. Every thought got foggy. I remember a man's voice cutting through the hum of traffic. "Hey, you okay?" I looked up. He was maybe in his 50s. Gray hair, kind eyes that actually looked at me like I was a person and not just street furniture. His name was Daniel Cooper, a long-haul truck driver who'd stopped for coffee at the 24-hour place across the street. He gave me his jacket without asking questions. Called for help. Stayed until the ambulance came, even though he had a delivery to make. "You're going to be okay," he kept saying. I didn't believe him. The hospital lights were too bright, too clean. Everything felt surreal, like I'd crossed into some other dimension where people actually cared whether I lived or died. A nurse clipped a tag around my wrist while asking me standard questions. Name, date of birth, address. I gave her the first two. Couldn't answer the third. She wrote, name, Ruby Miller. Address, unknown. That word hit harder than the pneumonia. Unknown. Like I'd been erased from every map that mattered. When I woke up, there was a styrofoam cup of orange juice on the tray and a $20 bill tucked neatly underneath it. The nurse said the truck driver, Daniel, had left it for me before he headed out. He said you'll need it more than he does, she told me. I stared at that bill for a long time. 2 20s now. $40 between me and whatever came next. One from the people who threw me away. One from a stranger who gave a damn. They discharged me 2 days later, still weak, with a pamphlet for Haven House shelter. It was wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop, peeling paint, flickering sign, but warmth inside. The woman who ran it, Beverly Chambers, looked at me the way no one had in a long time. Straight in the eye, like I was worth looking at. You get one bed, one lock, one chance to rebuild, she said. That's all we ask. That's all anyone should need. So I cleaned floors, folded sheets, scrubbed bathrooms until my hands cracked from bleach. The work was hard, but it felt like proof I existed. The other women there called me the quiet one. I kept my head down, saved meal vouchers, collected job flyers from the bulletin board. One afternoon, Beverly pinned a new paper to the board. Help wanted, Santos's Diner, 5th and Pine. It was handwritten, the kind of ad most people walk right past without reading. But I saw it and thought, maybe this is where it starts. The next morning, I walked there and borrowed shoes that were half a size too small. The diner smelled like coffee and burnt toast, the kind of place that didn't pretend to be anything else. Behind the counter stood Gloria Santos, sleeves rolled up, hair streaked with gray, eyes that had seen everything twice. She glanced at me once, took in my thrift store coat and the faded hospital band still on my wrist. You ever wait tables? She asked. No, I said. But I learn fast. She tossed me an apron. Good. Start with the syrup bottles. If you last the week, I'll pay you. That night, as I wiped down the counter and listened to rain tapping against the window, I realized something important. Silence doesn't have to mean defeat. Sometimes it's just the sound of rebuilding. Days at Santos's Diner bled together in the best possible way. Mornings thick with the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee. Nights echoing with the hiss of the espresso machine and the clatter of dishes. My arms ached. My feet blistered. But for the first time in my life, exhaustion felt clean. It was mine. Gloria didn't waste words. She'd correct me without looking up. You missed a spot. Customers noticed details. Her tone was rough, but her eyes carried something else, a quiet respect that grew as I stopped making excuses and started fixing problems before she even had to point them out. Each shift, I watched how the place worked. Who came in when? Which orders piled up during rush hour? Which supplies ran out first? Chaos has patterns if you look close enough. By the second week, I started reorganizing. Salt shakers refilled by section. Condiments sorted by delivery date. Invoices stacked by supplier. I scribbled everything in a cheap notebook I kept in my apron pocket. One morning, a delivery truck backed into the alley, late again. The driver, Marcus Webb, jumped out humming under his breath. Sorry, traffic, he said, rolling crates through the back door. I helped him unload. Eggs here, flour there, perishables up front where they'd be easy to grab. He watched me for a moment, then grinned. You always sort stuff like that. Makes it easier to find things later, I said. Saves time during rush. You've got a head for systems, he replied. Most people just throw stuff wherever. It was the first compliment that didn't feel like charity. That night, I stayed after closing, sketching a better delivery schedule on napkins. Lines and circles, arrows connecting suppliers, time slots optimized. When Gloria found it on the counter the next morning, she studied it for a long moment. You did this? I nodded, suddenly nervous. I just thought if we staggered the deliveries. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her apron. Keep thinking like that, she said. The world runs on chaos. People like you keep it moving. Weeks turned into months. The diner became my education in logistics. I built spreadsheets on the shelter's old computer, tracking supply flow, mapping routes, calculating labor hours. When Marcus's truck broke down one day, I rearranged the entire week's deliveries over the phone, calling suppliers, negotiating times, making it work. Everything arrived on time. He called me the human GPS after that. It made me laugh, but it also made something inside me shift. Maybe I wasn't just rebuilding my life. Maybe I was designing it. When Everline Freight posted a clerk position, Marcus brought me the flyer himself. You'd be perfect for this, he said. They need someone who thinks the way you do. I hesitated. They won't hire someone without a degree. Try anyway, he insisted. Sometimes experience beats paper. So I did. I printed a 2-page resume that smelled faintly of diner coffee. The manager, Paul Henderson, asked simple questions. Organization. Communication. Problem solving. I answered honestly. No embellishments. No pretending to be something I wasn't. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You've got no degree, he said. But you've got instinct. We can work with that. That sentence changed everything. At Everline, I learned what control felt like. Systems, routes, data. The world finally had structure, and I could read it like a language I'd been born to speak. Within a year, I became the one rewriting those routes, fixing inefficiencies nobody else even saw. I worked nights, weekends, every spare moment. Taught myself advanced logistics software. Read every manual I could find. Other people saw a job. I saw a blueprint. That's when I understood something crucial. I didn't need their table. I was building an entire network. It took 5 years to turn that diner notebook into an empire. Ascend Operations Group started as a borrowed desk in a drafty office above a print shop. Just me and a second-hand laptop. Every invoice, every call, every sleepless night was one more brick in the wall between who I'd been and who I was becoming. By 23, that wall had a skyline view of Seattle. My company trained small businesses to run like giants. Fair pay, efficient systems, no wasted potential. We helped the people everyone else overlooked, the ones who didn't have fancy degrees or family money, just hunger and heart. I kept a few reminders framed on my office wall, the hospital wristband marked, unknown address, and the wrinkled $20 bill my mother had pressed into my hand that rainy night. Relics of what it cost to be forgotten. That morning, Morgan, my HR manager, appeared at my door with her tablet. New candidate for the operations coordinator position, she said. Strong background. 3 years in PR logistics. She paused, squinting at the screen. Name's Courtney Miller. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Then the air in the room shifted, grew heavier somehow. I didn't look up. I just said, schedule her for Tuesday. Tuesday arrived with steady rain, soft and rhythmic against the windows. I came in early, straightened the papers on my desk, then stared at that framed $20 bill. The ink had faded into a ghost of green, but the memory was sharp as ever. At 9 on the dot, Morgan knocked once before opening the door. She's here. Send her in. The click of heels on polished floor. That same confident rhythm I'd once envied when she used to walk down our hallway in Bloomington, basking in our parents' attention. When the door opened, Courtney stepped inside. Composed. Elegant. Hair pinned the same way Mom used to do it for her recitals. She smiled politely. Good morning. Morning, I said. Please, have a seat. She didn't recognize me. Of course she didn't. To her, I was just another executive, a ghost wearing success like armor. Morgan did the formal introduction, completely unaware of the history bleeding into the room. This is Miss Ruby Miller, founder and CEO. The name landed between us like a spark. Courtney blinked. A small tremor passed through her fingers as she adjusted her folder. Miller, she echoed softly, unsure whether to connect the dots. I gestured toward the chair. Let's begin. Her resume was solid, on paper, at least. She spoke about project management, team coordination, leadership under pressure. Every word was rehearsed, polished. A mask she'd probably worn for years. I listened, letting silence fill the gaps between sentences until she began to shift uncomfortably in her seat. Finally, I asked, tell me about a time you had to handle conflict. She hesitated. Well, at my last company, there was a staff dispute. I had to enforce fairness, make sure everyone got what they deserved. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Fairness, I repeated, my tone calm, measured. That's an interesting word. What does it mean to you? She met my gaze, the first flicker of confusion in her eyes. It means making sure everyone has the same chance. Everyone. Yes, she said quickly. Everyone. The word hung there, sharp and unsteady. Then her eyes drifted to the wall behind me. She saw the frames. The wristband. The $20 bill. I watched the exact moment recognition dawned. Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. Her hand went to her throat like she couldn't breathe. Ruby. The sound of my name from her mouth felt both foreign and familiar. I leaned back in my chair. We're here to discuss your qualifications. For a second, she couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she closed the folder on her lap. I didn't know. I thought that I didn't survive. I finished quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. We were told you left. Mom said you wanted space. I wanted to look for you, I swear, but Dad said. I cut her off with a small shake of my head. This isn't about the past, Ms. Miller. This is a professional setting. She swallowed hard, trying to find her footing again. You've done well, she managed, her voice cracking. You built all this. So have you, I said softly. You've learned how to sound sincere. The room went silent except for the rain whispering against the glass. I didn't mean, she started. But I raised a hand. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. Anger was a luxury I couldn't afford. I built something instead. Her tears broke then, quick and quiet. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming. Mom and Dad, they miss you. They regret everything. They talk about you all the time now. Dad keeps your room exactly how you left it. I studied her for a moment. Every piece of the old hierarchy replayed in my mind. Her ribboned car. My folding chair. Her applause. My silence. Her phone buzzing while my life fell apart. They made their choices, I said finally. And so did you. Courtney's voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't stop them. I should have. I was young and stupid and selfish, but I should have stood up for you. You didn't have to, I replied. That's the thing about silence. It's complicity dressed as comfort. She nodded slowly, the weight of 5 years pressing down on her shoulders. Are you going to hire me? I looked down at her resume, then back at her. Saw the desperation there, the same desperation I'd felt 5 years ago standing in that kitchen. That depends. Can you follow leadership that values fairness over favoritism? I can try. Good, I said. Because that's the only thing we build here. Fairness. Real fairness. Not the kind that sounds good in interviews. When she left, Morgan slipped back in, uncertain. So, what do you think? I glanced at the window. Rain streaked the glass in silver lines, just like that night 5 years ago. Give her the position, I said finally. Morgan blinked. You're sure? Everyone deserves a chance, I murmured. Even the ones who once denied you yours. That evening, after the office emptied, I stood by the window watching the lights blur through the rain. Somewhere out there, my sister was driving home, probably replaying every word, maybe realizing that forgiveness doesn't always sound like mercy. Sometimes it just sounds like boundaries. I touched the frame on the wall. The $20 bill, flattened and fragile under glass. They gave me a door slam, I thought. I built an open one. The phone buzzed on my desk. Mom calling. I let it ring once, twice, then pressed silence. The sound faded, replaced by the hum of rain and city noise below. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, turning the rain on my office window into liquid gold. For once, the city looked calm, like it had exhaled with me. Courtney showed up for her first day early, nervous, carrying a notebook instead of pride. When I passed her in the hallway, she stopped. Thank you for giving me a chance, she said softly. I nodded. Earn it. Not unkindly. Just honestly. She smiled faintly, like someone relearning a language they used to speak. Throughout the day, I watched her work. Quiet, deliberate, unsure of her footing but trying. Really trying. And somewhere inside me, something unknotted. Not forgiveness exactly. Just release. Later, when the office was empty again, I stood at my desk and looked at the 3 things that built my life, the hospital wristband, the $20 bill, and the company logo framed between them. They once marked failure, pity, and survival. Now they meant legacy. I picked up the framed 20, my reflection blending with it in the glass. Unknown address was no longer who I was. I had roots now. A company. A purpose. People who depended on me. I placed it back carefully, turned off the lights, and whispered into the quiet, the debt's been paid in full. That weekend, I drove back to Bloomington for the first time in 5 years. The town looked smaller. The roads narrower. Like I'd outgrown it in every way that mattered. But that old bus stop was still there. Same dented bench. Same flickering light. I laid a small bouquet on the seat, then placed the framed $20 bill beside it. This is where they ended me, I whispered. And where I began. The air smelled like wet pavement and second chances. I stood there for a long time, not waiting for anyone to show up, just listening to the rain hit the metal roof. It didn't sound cruel anymore. It sounded like music. Like possibility. When I turned to leave, dawn was breaking, pale gold spilling over the empty street. Because everyone deserves a future. Even the ones told they didn't. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about resilience, second chances, and building something beautiful from broken pieces. Remember, the people who count you out are writing your origin story.